Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith and I am your host with the most. I hope you enjoy listening to this one. Something a little bit different this time around. This is episode number 55. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you once again, as I always do. I love welcoming people. It's all about welcome to the audio world. Welcome you once again to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. And this is a new segment with the sponsors that are involved with my podcast here. It's Colin Campbell Chemicals, as you may have heard, new sponsors of the podcast, Keeper of the Green segment. Well, this is going to be Campbell's Corner, where I'm going to chat with Nadeem, who's involved with Colin Campbell Chemicals, who's part of the company. He's going to, we're just going to chat about a few bits and pieces about their business, about what they offer and where they come from and all sorts of different things, and give you a bit more of an insight into who they are as well, just the same. So I'm not going to waste any more time talking about them and about Nadeem. I'm going to say to you that I have Nadeem on the line, who's somewhere not in Sydney at the moment in Australia. He's down in Tasmania. Welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, Nadeem. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, Steve, mate. Thanks for having me on, mate. This is awesome. As we said, we're sort of just before we started recording, the technology that allows us to do this, it's pretty amazing. And yeah, I'm in sunny Tasmania. At this time, it is May, the end of May, and one of the things, obviously, a lot of the East Coast, the Sydney guys, the New South Wales guys, and the Queensland guys have been suffering from a lot of rain, overcast days, but I am getting my vitamin D filled down here, which is good. The great perks of this job.
I don't know if it's good or bad. You got to fly like 3 hours to get a vitamin D hit at the moment. It's quite remarkable, and we don't often think of Tassie being sunnier than the east coast of Australia, but it is.
It is enough. I was up. I'm currently, just to let you know, I'm down in Hobart for a fruit growers conference. However,
okay.
The last couple of days have been the ASTMA Tasmania State Conference.
Right.
That was up at Devonport Country Club. So it's their annual seminar they've done, and it was a great seminar. 2 days, and about
nice.
90 delegates.
Oh,
So
great turnout.
It was a really good turnout, actually. So, I'm just going to talk about how good the weather was, because I've not seen the sun. It's only about 15 degrees outside, but there's sun. So I couldn't complain about that.
Well, mate, this morning I woke up in Sydney. The sun's out, and we looked outside, and I nearly burnt my eyeballs because the sun's out. But I got to tell you, I woke up. We're on the beaches here, and I think it said it was 12 degrees. So not only have you got more sun down in Tassie, but it's also warmer.
a little bit warmer. It was, I think, about 4 degrees earlier this morning. But yeah, it's come out where you don't realistically need a jacket. That's a great thing.
Very good.
But one thing I did mention, I want to say to the audience, I met your second guest of Keeper of the Greens up in Devonport, the great Phil Hill from Barnbougle Dunes. Well, I know him, but I saw him, should I say.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. That's good. How is Phil? I haven't spoken to Phil for a few months. That's great.
Yeah, Phil is really good. He really enjoyed the podcast and the likes like that, so he enjoyed being on there.
Lovely man, Phil.
Yeah, because part of it, just let the audience know, like, one of the things, like, yeah, we are sponsoring the Keeper of the Green segment, but me, Steve, we've spoken before, and I said to you, I want people to know about this podcast with the you interviewing all the superintendents. So I got up there, and part of my talk about 10 minutes was about poetry and podcasts. So
yep.
I think I spent more time on the podcast side and told people, you've got to listen to the Golfing Greenkeeper. You've got to listen to it. You got to listen. Number one, listen to Keeper of the Green segment, but you got to listen to everything. So hopefully, a few people will take that up. And actually, a few people came up to me afterwards and say they do listen to quite a few podcasts. Some have heard of it, some hadn't heard of it. So,
mate, thank you.
Hopefully growing the audience.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate the assistance there in getting the name out. And look, it is. Podcast is getting more and more people are tuning into the things that they really want to hear about, and podcast is starting to explode. We're hearing a lot more about it. So it's really good, mate, and I appreciate you certainly putting it out there for me and helping the podcast along. I appreciate the sponsorship, and that's a little bit of what this is. And it's nice to always catch up with different people, and certainly it's always nice to hear when you catch up with people that I've interviewed on the podcast. So that's great to hear, mate. It's really good. But mate, we'll kick things off as a little bit of fun chatter to see where you are and what you're up to at the moment down there in Tassie. Let's kick things off at Campbell's Corner. That's what I want to call this one. And I want to look. I've mentioned you guys as sponsors of my podcast and the Keeper of the Greens, as we've talked about. You've got an ad running with us at the moment as well that I've mentioned. A lot of people have heard of Colin Campbell Chemicals. A lot of people may not have heard of Colin Campbell Chemicals. why don't we just start at the beginning here and tell us a little bit about how Colin Campbell's basically started. It's from Sydney in its very early days, and sort of how it came to be to where you guys are now in the certainly as we know it in the turf industry. Tell us a bit about the background.
Yeah, definitely. It's got a very long history. It has been around a long time, and it is true. It's like exactly what you said. There's a lot of people who know us, some people who don't know us. The other side of it, a lot of people don't know where we come from in the story, and that's one of the things we wanted to. Last couple of years, the company turned 80 years in 2020 during COVID. Great time to turn 80 during COVID, during lockdown.
Let's turn 80 years old, and then we don't want to hear from you for 2 years. So just get back in your box.
That's exactly right. So we're sort of now celebrating 81 and 82 years with the 80 years just to get that story going. So one of the things we wanted to do was like going, well, we're proud of the history of the company. We are Australian. It's something we have not really told the turf industry of who we are, what we stand for, and how we work. Yep. So it is something there. It was interesting because before COVID, I met with a few supers for dinner and everything like that. And I just vaguely mentioned, does anyone know like sort of the history of Campbell's? And they go, oh, no, not really. And that sort of got me going, well, no, we've got to tell this. So, yeah, so the company started in 1940. Colin Campbell Sr. was the person who started it back in 1940 in Alexandria. It was working on printing chemicals and the likes like that.
Okay.
Then his two sons came into the business, Colin Campbell Jr. and Neil Campbell. Like a lot of the listeners who know Campbell Chemicals would remember Neil. Neil was a guy who was the turf rep, and he went around to a lot of different golf courses. If I remember correctly, he might have been on the board of Kalara or Pinball. He had a lot of tie-up there, had a tie-up with the Australian Golf Club as well.
Wow.
And that's what. So a lot of the, the older generation, well, mostly now retired superintendents, remembered Neil Campbell.
Sure.
It wasn't Colin. Colin always used to be sitting in the office and the likes.
Right.
So it was Colin and Neil there. So around the 50s and 60s, they really started to hone in on more niche products in the horticulture space.
Okay.
That was one thing. The horticulture space with the apples, stone fruit area. That was our sort of bread and butter, our main thing.
Right.
Once I did a talk on the history of chemicals, and I was proud to say we did have all the old chemistry, the old nasty ones that no one, some people have heard of, the old PMA, DDT. Now we look at them and go, wow, how did anyone ever use it? But back then, these were brand new technology, and this was technology that was working brilliantly to control a lot of pests and diseases. But as we go on and as we learn and then develop products and also the safety side of it, we look at it going, well, wow, how did they use that? But that's what was used at the time. So they did a lot of that. Then they had a bit more of a focus, a turf-specific focus in the 60s, and really selling direct. We had distributors around Australia, but in Sydney we were selling direct. We had a sales force.
Right.
Fast forward to the mid to late 70s, and this is sort of where my sort of story starts.
Okay.
But I wasn't born yet. My father, immigrated to Australia in the early 70s. Got married, came out to Australia. His brother was out here, and he said, "Come to Australia." We're from a Jordanian background. I'll just mention that first. In the Middle East,
okay.
Middle East is a beautiful part of the world. The biggest thing is obviously the war and the uncertainty. But I always say to people, look, Jordan is like the most peaceful country in the Middle East. It's the Switzerland of the Middle East. So It's got a lot of history and everything. So it's a great place to visit it. I've visited myself there and also taken my wife there as well.
Lovely. Hang on, mate. Have we digressed to a tourism podcast? Is that what? Is that what's going on here?
I do like to go off on a tangent. It's like going, I know we were going to speak about something. But now it's like, yeah.
Very good, mate. Very good. Yeah, go on. I don't mean to interrupt, but go on.
No. So my father worked at Colin Campbell Chemicals as an accountant, then worked his way up to general manager. And then we had another person come into the business, an agronomist who was a junior agronomist at the time, Jeff Derrick. And he came in sort of very late 70s. And then in the mid-80s, the company wasn't doing so well. It was under quite a bit of debt. Colin and Neil had a little bit of a falling out. That they were just not getting interested in the company, and their sons, their kids weren't interested. So my father and Jeff saw potential in the business, pretty much had a management buyout of the company and transformed it. So we got rid of all the direct selling, got rid of a whole heap of sales reps, unfortunately, had to get the company to survive, started putting on the distribution network in Sydney and outside of Australia. Outside of Sydney and the other states, and this was the horticulture side as well.
Yep.
And then sort of started to build the business back up from there. And then my brother joined full time in 96, 97. And then I came on full time in 2000.
Wow, and that's a little bit of, I suppose I'll jump in there, that's a little bit of when you and I got to know each other. I mean, we've known each other for the best part of 20-something years.
That's exactly right. Because I came in and my brother was doing the turf side of things, and then he started going into visiting horticulture customers, and I took over the turf side.
Right.
And I've been in the turf side. I do some horticulture, but been in the turf side ever since, and really enjoyed it. To be honest, I think I've got the better job.
No sibling rivalry or anything going on there.
No, of course not.
Mate, look, I'm glad you've met. That's incredible history, and just in that few minutes, explaining the history of the company, it gives us an insight into who you are. Like you mentioned, you're an Australian-owned company, and it's from humble beginnings in Sydney, and I think that's all great to know. I didn't know any. I've known you for 20-something years. Yeah. And I think I mentioned to you that I didn't know the background of Colin Campbell Chemicals, and I've heard that it's an Australian, owned and operated company. But I was just like, well, how does that work? I'm not sure, because I don't know that we have any chemical companies in Australia in turf that do anything in this company. They're all owned by somebody somewhere else. Yeah. Usually, it's from what I gather, and I haven't looked deeply into it. But it was just like, okay, they're saying they're Australian, so now I want to learn more. But you've explained that quite well, and it's also interesting. And I will point out, mate, look at if people meet you, you hear the name, or you introduce yourself as Nadeem Zrykat. I think I got that correct.
Yes, you did, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the Jordanian background, because you mentioned you're Australian, you're born here. My family heritage is Italian. And most people know that Steve Smith is not going to be an Italian, but I am. And that's one of those things. So it's you can be born here, you're Australian, but you've got a background from somewhere else. So it's nice to know that connection with your name, because often it's not, you don't introduce yourself as Barry Smith. You're an Aussie, Barry. G'day, Barry. Nice to meet you. It's Nadeem. So we know where you are. We know your background now. We know how you got involved with the company, and it's you and your brother at the moment involved with other people, like you mentioned there. So I think that's really good to hear as well along the way. And you're obviously, you've been with it for 20 odd years, getting in from a young age. Is that sort of, how did you get into it?
Yeah, that's right. It started really, school holidays, we went and worked and packed fertilizer. We have a product, our orchid fertilizer, which has been going on since I think the company started. And we were just packing that and the lights like that. So that's what we used to do during the holidays. Obviously, we got paid for it.
What a great way. Most kids are out riding bikes and all sorts of stuff. And there's Nadeem and his brother. Your brother's Ramsey, is it?
Yeah, Ramsey. Yeah,
so Nadeem and Ramsey. Yep. Where are we going for holidays, Mum and Dad? We're going down to the warehouse.
That's exactly, and my cousin joined us as well at the time, and to be honest, we were making some good money for that age as well. So
nice.
I think we were making around going, like, a lot of people going, it was, I wouldn't say slave labor, but we were probably in $200 to $300 a week.
Holy truth!
Which
that's huge.
Back then, and this is from when we were like teenagers. So and we got to learn. We're starting literally at the bottom and seeing what products are going out and getting an idea of what it's all about. So it's one of those things we just and it was enjoyable. Sometimes we didn't like it, we didn't want to do it.
Yep.
Other times, but it was just, it helped Mum out to do what she needed to do at home, and we were looked after.
Mate, that's very, very good to hear. I like I said, it's nice to know the background into the business. Nice to know about the people that are involved in the businesses as well. I think that's great, and I think you've told us greatly, mate, where the background of the company comes from and your involvement. I think it's fantastic. I love hearing that it's family as well. I think that's a great thing too, and people, you're hearing about that now that you've been involved with it for such a long time. Between you and your brother, from your side, the business very, very well. You've been working there, like you said, since you were teenagers. That's great. Mate, want to move on a little bit now that we've heard a little bit about the background, and like I mentioned, it's great to hear about. Let's talk about sort of, and I've mentioned in the ad that you guys are focused on bringing the latest technology to the industry, to turf, and certainly there's your partner involved with the horticulture industry. You mentioned that as well in the history of the business. Yeah, how do you go about bringing some of those things to the marketplace, like latest technologies? What's involved in sourcing those things or finding out about them? Is there any R&D in there? Is it working with other partners or other businesses? And how does crop and turf sort of help out the sort of crossing over of crop protection as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I've always said to a lot of people, I said, look, we're not big enough to invent the molecule. We're not set up for that. We're sort of, even early on, and this has been the mantra of the company for a very long time, was there was a lot of companies overseas that didn't want to set up in Australia. It was expensive, and the market size was not big enough. Look, it is big, the Australian market, but in comparison to Europe, Asia, US, and South America, it is very small. Yep. So a lot of companies don't want to set up, but they want to look at distribution partners to go, they've got some unique products. Who can we sell it to that can represent our company, in Australia? And that's where we come in. Okay. So a lot of the times, like you will see, obviously with our range, it is all branded Campbell. It always is and always has been. It's what we do, because we do manufacture as well here in Australia.
You do?
We do we do. Yeah. So we probably manufacture from the turf side. It's probably about 40 to 50% of our products, probably a bit more now, probably about 60% of our products are manufactured in Australia.
Wow.
We work with different toll manufacturers, but we utilise one in particular over in the West, and they do a very, very good job for us with formulations. And realistically, it's not we're not just a customer, it's more of a partnership.
Yeah, right.
We're giving them more and more work, and the quality is,
So again, I just that really intrigues me, because and I've been in the industry for thereabouts on 20 years. I didn't even know chemicals and crop protection products were manufactured here. I just assumed everything is made overseas and is imported. I had no idea you even make stuff here. It's so good. So it's a bit of a supply chain thing of it's family-owned business, and you're actually manufacturing. So there's Australian jobs involved in the back end of making this stuff.
Yeah, definitely 100%. And that's the thing. So a lot of our products we do try to make here as much as possible. However, when it comes to the new chemistries and the likes like that that's where, yes, we get it fully imported from overseas, fully formulated, ready to sell.
Okay.
It just makes it easier, because obviously if they've got a patent on the product, or it's proprietary type of product where it can't be copied or anything like that, they just do it, which is fine by us. We work with a lot of those suppliers out of Europe, out of the US, out of Korea, Japan, Israel as well. We do a little bit out of South Africa, even out of South America with one of our suppliers in the horticulture space. They've got manufacturing facilities in the US and in South America, and depending on the time of year, we'll grab product from either of those just to help with the supply chain to make sure we get the product on time.
Yeah, right.
So it is. So so a bit of everything that way. But yeah, but if we can make it here in Australia, we do. We try to do that, and the likes like that.
That's awesome. And so, and I just mentioned earlier, between sort of hort or crop protection and turf, I think we all know that agriculture and that side of it is obviously a leader in crop protection. They want to know the latest and greatest stuff. We're dealing with people's foods and so on. So are there elements that you search in that region in crop protection, in ag, to find out what can come across into turf? Is that some of the spaces you're looking as well?
Yeah, definitely. If there's something we're looking at going, if there's a product for horticulture and we're developing for that going, does it have a use in turf? Not all the time. Some things do come over in that respect. Like Iprodine is probably one of the greatest examples. It's used a lot in horticulture. It's used a lot in turf like that. But what's happening these days? Well, for us in particular, is like the niche products that we're looking at, the products that we want to develop, they are looking more specific, very turf specific or very horticulture specific.
Okay.
One of the ones we can say, we've got a biological control for codling moth in apples.
Wow.
It's a virus. Only kills codling moth, and that's all it does. But it doesn't hurt anything else. But that wouldn't be able to translate it into the turf, into the turf side.
Yep.
However, we are looking at both sides of it going. and the other side going, is there something in our turf area that can be used also in the horticulture side? Because sometimes a lot of these products going, work hasn't been done on either. Like we talk to our suppliers and go, look, where has this been trialed? And they'll say, oh, yes, done these crops. Have you tried turf? No. So we're the guinea pig. So we'll
right.
go out and try it and see if it actually works.
So,
yeah.
So you guys will sort of venture into that space a little bit to, maybe this leads into a little bit more of understanding the Australian marketplace or the Australian turf space, products that are going to be helpful in our region, in our environments, and with our laws, obviously. There's lots of environmental protection laws and so on in Australia. It's quite strict compared to other parts of the world. Do you guys venture down that part in terms of selecting products? How much are you guys involved in some of that early evaluation of whether products work or don't work?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of products that you might see that look good overseas, but may not translate into Australia. Environmental conditions, climatic conditions, different pressures for weeds, insects, diseases, and the likes. So there's two parts to it. Obviously, if we register a chemical and it's got a registered label with the APVMA, we've obviously done the replicated work to get it all registered. I'll go into that real quickly just with PowerCure, but
sure.
One of the other things we do is like going, even if a product doesn't have to be registered in Australia, we were looking at something for nematodes a number of years ago, and it had promise over in Europe and looked like it had good data and the likes. And one of the things going, okay, well let's get a sample and try it out, and try it out. So we've tried two different products. One we tried and it did not live up to any expectations. It didn't do anything really. So it was quite interesting in terms of that. The other time, and the product, they didn't want to give us a sample, and they didn't want to give us a sample to try out. We said, well, if you don't want to give us a sample, we're not going to even bother looking at taking it on. And then another product said they claimed to control polar or help to reduce polar populations. We went and did quite a full summer or full sort of season worth of work, should I say, going, we saw no statistical differences, and that's what they were pushing in the US. And I'm thinking to myself going, it's like going, how do they sell it? Going, we would not be able to put our name to a product if we did not believe in it and we knew it didn't work. So anything that we bring on the market, we know it works.
So you really do go to the lengths of understanding. It's not just a carbon copy from somewhere else, and saying that this works on turf in another part of the world. So we'll distribute it and bring it here and under our brand to sell it to the Australian marketplace. You're actually checking to make sure that what you're going to put your name to has relevance and is going to stand by what it claims in Australia. And there's a difference to that in that you're really understanding the local environments and local pests and whatever it is that we're protecting against, pathogens and so on, to know that it's going to deliver what it's claiming and it is going to work in our environments here.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I will say, good example, sort of PowerCure, we launched that a couple of years ago under COVID, unfortunately, but we launched that. And one of the things we had a permit for, permit trials, only small scale trials, but a lot of the work with PowerCure was done back in between 2012 and 2015. And then when we started taking on to actually further to finally get it to Australia and get it launched, we had a permit trial and we tried it across. We knew what it could do. We know that all the trial work that was there was done properly and it did what it said it would do. However, the big thing was going, what's it visually? What is it like for the turf manager to look at it, the superintendent to look at it going, okay, how do I best utilize it? So we literally we tried it as per label, and then we started playing around with different ways of doing it as per the label, different intervals, different rates. How would it work? How quickly does it work? How slow does it work? Is this a viable option to recommend later on? Those type of things. So we learnt a lot from that, because now since we've got it and you talk to people about it going, we know what it's going to do. I say to people, I know what it's going to do. I know what the end result's going to be. It's getting there. That's the most important part. And every place where we put PowerCure, it's slightly different in getting to that end result of getting rid of the polar. And to be honest, that really does excite me. I always say to people going, if someone uses it for the first time, going, we always help the turf manager, the superintendent, and visually go and visit or talk to them on the phone, going, what's happening with it? Are you seeing death? Are you seeing it melt out? What's happening there? We're really excited with that, because we do want the product to work, but we also want the the person who uses it to have the best experience with it. Because it's a quite a power is a big issue. So we want it to succeed, and we want it to succeed well.
And power is a big issue. I mean, if it's identified by a club as something that's undesirable, then it can be a big issue. It's hard to deal with. Others, I can speak for myself, again, being in the Blue Mountains, and where I come from, we're in the cool climate. We didn't really see the need to combat that. We accepted that our environment was conducive to a heavy power infestation that as a club we didn't want to go down the path of fighting against. So we that was our decision. That was what we wanted to do, and we kept power into our greens and managed it as such. And there's things that come with doing so. But if you decide, and if a club decides that power is an undesirable turf that you wanted on your golf course, then there are ways to do it. And PowerCure is a leading product. And let's talk about PowerCure for a minute, because it is a new product to the marketplace. It's a leading product to power management, which is wintergrass for another name. It's power control in golf turf surfaces. Tell us a bit about PowerCure and how it's different and how it's new.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to, you mentioned when you started there, it's like straight away you mentioned the right thing, going, you wanted to work with power when you're up the mountains as a superintendent, and we're all for that. So I always ask people, and I've had a couple of superintendents go, look, Nadeem, PowerCure is not for me, but that's fine.
That's okay.
I said, don't worry about that. You can manage it. For instance, down here in Tasmania, power wintergrass works really well. Really well. That's the way the climate is. So I'm 100% for that. But if you want it, if it's not a desirable species, we've got something to take it out. So the great thing about PowerCure, it can be used across all different types of surfaces. It's safe on pretty much all grasses. However, generally, realistically, we're looking well above majority on greens only. The great thing about PowerCure is there's other products like, we've got PowerCheck, the Endothal, which you put on and it's like going, it just wipes out everything on your green. An old superintendent said to me, he said, it's like going, if whatever percentage of power you think you have, double it, and you'll notice it when you put on PowerCheck, and that is so true.
There you go. That's interesting.
It's like, I've only got 10%. Oh no, you've actually got 20. You see how much it wipes out. It's a great tool, as is like the other products out there for power control. But where PowerCure comes in, it works very slowly. That's the beauty about it. So you can actually convert. If you've got sort of not much power, if you say do have 5 to 10%, yes, we can eliminate it quite quickly. When I mean quite quickly, it's within about an 8-week period. However, when you're looking at high power percentage greens, we can convert those, and we've done a few courses where we look at it going, if you've got 80, 90% power greens, we can convert them back to bent grass. Because you've got to remember all the greens were planted with bent once upon a time. Bent grass is still there. The bent still gets all the nutrition, the water, and everything to stay alive. It just doesn't see the light of day because of power.
Just out-competed,
That's right. We allow that bent grass to see the light of day and push through. And that's the beauty about PowerCure. It's I say to all those people going, your bent grass is happy? Great. Power's dying? Great. That's what we want to see. Just look about the bent grass, and the bent grass will slowly start to convert over. And it is a long process. So those high power percentage greens, we can convert them within, usually we do longer intervals with PowerCure. We stretch them all out, and we do it over a 4 to 6 month period where, as I said, if you only got 5, 10%, we can do it quite quickly. It's still not quickly 8 weeks, but it does get rid of it. And it's got a long residual on it where we're not seeing, like at the moment, just with all this rain in Sydney, there's a lot of power going, exploding everywhere. But the people who've used PowerCure last season, they're not seeing power come back.
Wow.
They're not seeing it.
Okay.
And this is the other thing was, this product keeps on surprising me. It's like we know a lot about it, but now we're starting to see longer term results. It's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. It's very different, and I mentioned before that it's a new product with its new technology as well, and it's a different mode of action and grouping. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a brand new resistance grouping. It's a Group 30 herbicide. So it's a new group that's just introduced into the chemical space, sort of the agricultural chemical space.
Wow.
There is one other product in the broadacre side that's got Group 30, but it's a very, very different profile. But and that's the thing with some of the mode of actions. You might have 10 actives, but those 10 active ingredients do completely different things. They just work the same way to kill something.
Yeah.
But they work on all different things. So the PowerCure with the methylazoline active works very differently. So any resistant PowerCure will kill. That's the great thing about it.
That's impressive too. And for anyone listening that's not sure, if you're not in depth in the greenkeeping space, but you're interested in it, we talk about modes of actions and resistance groups and in herbicides and all chemicals in turf across the board, even in ag. And Nadeem will be able to probably explain it a little bit better than myself. But it's basically there's particular groups that you don't try to use back to back if they're in the same category, because that means they're working the same way, and you can build resistance within those undesirables, whether we're talking about turf species or pests or diseases. Is that right, Nadeem? Is that about right?
Yeah, that's 100% right. I give some talks at some TAFEs around New South Wales, around curry tape and rye tape over the years. And when I talk resistance to the students, and just to get them an idea of what it all is and how to manage it. And one of the things I say well, if you go to the gym and you're lifting a 10 kilo weight and you keep lifting a 10 kilo weight, it's going to become lighter and lighter. You need to go up a weight. You need to go up to 15 kilos, and it gets harder and harder. So similar to any sort of weeds or diseases.
Good analogy.
So you've got to mix it up. You've got to keep on pushing the envelope.
Yep.
Those type of things.
Because the evolution is so fast in a lot of these things that they can build that resistance up. It's quite scary sometimes too, but I was always conscious of that. Was one of my big things of rotating the groupings and the modes of action. So just to make sure that you're across it. Mate, PowerCure sounds really, really exciting, really interesting across the marketplace in terms of what it offers to the turf industry. You guys are a national company. You go across the country in terms of where you distribute. Is PowerCure something that you see being utilised around, slowly getting more traction by people as they start to be aware of it?
Oh, definitely. It's like when I was talking to a couple of people in Tassie about it, I said, look, you probably haven't heard much about or seen much of PowerCure, and our aim was never to sort of bring it to market and go everyone to use it. We want to go with this slowly, because the other side with PowerCure, it's a bit, because it's not a cheap product, and the way we want to work with PowerCure, we work with the superintendent, we work with the turf manager in discussing it and start on a slow area. We don't want people to go and cross hectares and hectares work straight up. It's because things can go wrong, as it is with any chemistry, and we know why. But yeah, we don't want to do that. So we want the turf manager the superintendent to get comfortable with the product. So we try a small area, like try one green, and then go from there to get them comfortable and the likes like that. So it could be that, say, for an 18-hole golf course going, someone uses one green this year, and then it's like, okay, next year we'll do another 6, and we'll rotate those 6 every year. We'll rotate to different 6 greens. Other ones, funnily enough, actually, I tried to talk a few courses out of going the whole 18 greens.
Right.
And I told them what could happen because of the high pole percentage.
Yep.
And to the club's credit, to the superintendent and the general manager, they said, no, we are happy to do this. We want to go on that conversion program. We want to do this, and we want to give it to our members. We've been doing quite a bit of work anyway. We want to do it over as quick as possible, obviously smooth as possible, because they're still playing on the greens. But we want to do it now. We don't want to put the members out over 2 or 3 years. And you know what? I did not understand that until I sat down with them, because look, I'm not from a greenkeeping background. I'm not from the general manager's point of view. And to hear that, it's like, okay, I didn't realise that. Yep. I said, all right, let's do it that way. And the superintendent that we worked with there, he has worked with PowerCure before when it first came to Australia. He was out of Victoria.
Yep.
So he knows about PowerCure, and I could trust him to do it the right way. And to be honest, now it's like going that, yeah, they've pretty much got not much power left. They might have a little bit they're going to have to control this season. But realistically, they've got bent grass greens again.
Yeah, wow. And like you said, at the end of the day, it's a tool in the toolbox, really. For turf managers, it's not, like you said, it's not for everyone either. It's not for every situation, and it doesn't mean that in all instances that power or wintergrass is the enemy. It's horses for courses, and it's a tool in the toolkit. So clubs, if they decide that that's one thing that they want to combat and then one thing they want to deal with, this is a tool that's available to them. And I think it's very exciting that something like this is brought to the marketplace. And I go back to a little bit of your, like we talked about before, your understanding how things work into the Australian environment. When I looked into this, I saw that you've done quite a bit of homework on the recommended times to use PowerCure. It's on the website about when to use it for different regions throughout Australia. You've got all these different regions broken down at best times of year. There's a lot of homework in there. You've got like the Blue Mountains, you've got Sydney Metro, you've got Melbourne, I think, in there, all over the place.
Yeah, that's definitely the case because one of the things is going in the US, this product, it got registered about 6 months. It was been on permit in the US for a very long time, but it got registered only 6 months before we got the registration here in Australia. And over there in the US, the way, if the audience doesn't, not quite sure, obviously the US from a landmass is a little bit smaller than Australia, but up north, the northern areas are all cool season areas, like where you are, Steve. It's like all the Blue Mountains area. Then you go down south, it's like you got the transition zone where sort of similar to us, and then you've got Florida and the warm season grasses. But one of the things is over there they go on the snow. We don't go under snow.
We don't do that. Yep.
No, so their timings are very different. Like they sometimes only recommend 2 or 3 applications in say autumn and then in spring. Where it's like in Australia, we can go like in Sydney. If you're coastal Sydney, we can go nearly all year round. But in Melbourne, you get a lot colder. So no, we don't want to go too much.
Yeah,
in
right.
that time of year. Down in Tasmania, down here, there's a couple of people who've used it here. We can go later into the summer because of the weather conditions. So it's PowerCure is safe, but one of the things is going, we've got those timing recommendations for the best time for PowerCure to get the best result. That's the thing there. In Western Australia, we tend to go over the winter time, but we had actually quite a few supers use it over summer, which we haven't done the work there, but they used it and to be honest, they got great results. I was over there about a month ago, and we were surprised. So
wow,
we're learning. So with those recommendations, we do go quite conservative. That's one thing when we talk, we go quite conservative. But as we learn more, we'll make different recommendations and the likes. And one of the things I just want to say, if anyone's listening here and knows someone who's using PowerCure, I encourage them to go have a chat to them. Like you can always talk to me. More than happy with that. But I've said to everyone in the industry, if you know someone using it, have a chat to them. There are no secrets with PowerCure. We're going to let you know everything about it because in the end result, we know what the end result will be. It's just getting there. We want to get there the best way.
Yeah, mate, that's great words and great advice because talking to someone, the practical, for that particular, for that particular usage of PowerCure on that site might sort of be close to someone else who's considering using it, and you may not know specifically about the detailed in the site. So they're sitting there going, well, I can go and, just see how, Barry's doing down the road. He's used it on a couple of greens of trial, and if he's got great results, we're sort of kind of within Kui, similar soils, similar shade conditions or whatever it might be. They'll go, yeah, okay, that's cool. Now let's talk turkey and how best should we use it.
Yeah, that's exactly. And if any of the superintendents listening to this and want, give me a call. I can tell you who's using it, and it's like going if they're close to you, going, or that other super kit, look, give them a call. That's the thing. So, and a lot of supers who are using it are more than happy. I've said to them, going, look, do you mind if such and such gives you a call? And always the answer is no problem.
Yeah.
If they don't have my number, give them my number.
Oh, mate,
and that's what. Yeah.
You travel around most of the cars. I don't think there's not too many numbers you don't have, surely.
When the new super comes along, it's like, oh, wait a minute, do I
Mate.
Then you call the old super number and it goes to him. It's like, oh, okay, you've got this number now.
Very good, mate. Very good. Now, we've talked about in the past that you've been a leader in bringing technologies to Australia. What are the other things that you've been involved with as a company that have brought other products that you still have for sale, that are still on your product listing, that you've been involved with as a company that we might have heard of?
Yeah, well, one of the things I know we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago and that you wouldn't realise, it's like you got Syngenta out there with Daconil Weatherstick.
Yep.
So for people not listening, going, we brought Daconil to Australia back in the 70s to turf. It was Daconil under our branding, under Campbell Daconil. That's what it was. So we actually did all the original work for chlorothalonil back in the 70s. So what happened, just a little bit of a history there there was when the company that invented chlorothalonil came to Australia, again, they couldn't do it. They didn't want to do it themselves. It was out of Japan.
Yep.
And they gave distribution for us in turf, and they gave a company called Crop Care in the ag side for horticulture, and they called it Bravo there.
Right.
So over the years, we had an agreement. We did turf, and they did horticulture. What happened was Syngenta bought the company that owns the name Daconil, so we had to change our name. And with their blessing, I'll give them this. Syngenta, we said, look, we want to change the name. We want to call it Dacagreen. They went away and they gave us permission to go with Dacagreen.
Yeah, right.
But one thing we did is we kept with the original source of chlorothalonil, which is the company in Japan where Syngenta gets it off currently, because of the quality of that product. It's second to none, not just because of the sticker, but the actual formulation and the active ingredient, it is far superior to any other chlorothalonil out there. And we've got data to show that as well with the storage side of things, the sticking capabilities of it in comparison to a lot of other chlorothalonil products out there. So we're very proud we could say we brought that to the market.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that was a game changer, because back then that was when a lot of the older chemistries, the PMAs and all that were starting to go by the wayside and getting banned or getting restricted.
Yep.
And then another one we brought out was ProPlant, so propamacarb.
Okay.
So what happened was we had this in our nursery range, in our ag range for Pythium, but we always wanted to develop it for turf. So we did the work, and it was 2001 we got it registered for turf. So
wow,
ProPlant was great. At the time you had Aliette, which is now Signature,
yep.
and you had Terrazol for lithium control. That's all you had. A bit of TMCD too if you really wanted to.
Yep.
But that was all it is. ProPlant brought in completely different, because it's a bit sort of strange to say this now, but 20 years ago you had one curative, one preventative. That's it.
Yep.
ProPlant brought both curative, preventative, and long-term residual.
Wow.
So we were the first ones with propamacarb into the Australian market. So yeah.
Wow, mate.
Very proud of that.
So
very proud of that.
There you go. So we're starting to see a picture. I know I certainly am. So I hope other people, and I haven't been around like a lot of the other guys, some of the people who are retired, even though I'm not currently working as a super. But it's very interesting to hear, because I've seen products around. I've heard some of the products that you've got there. The ProPlant, I remember seeing them when I was buying stuff and the like for our golf course there at Katoomba. And I didn't realise that you guys were at the forefront of bringing that to the Australian marketplace. So it's really nice to hear where you sit in the landscape, and in terms of turf protection, but also how you're the leaders in part and a way for certain products in bringing those things to the Australian market. And it's really good to hear some of that insight, mate, and I appreciate you letting us know that in some detail. And sometimes, like you mentioned there with Syngenta, I mean, we're not, you got to work friendly with people at the same time as well, and it's a closed market, and everyone knows everyone.
No, 100%. And I always say this, and this is not a secret or anything like that. Going at the end of the day, I always say with the likes of Syngenta, Bayer, and those guys, going, look, we compete against each other. We do it fairly. You win the business because you did better than I did. Fair enough. But at the end of the day, we can sit there and have a beer and have a discussion.
Yeah.
Because in the end, we've all got a job. We've all got families to feed. There's no point in fighting against each other in that respect from a personal point of view.
Yep.
Let's just compete well. But yeah, let's sit down and have a beer. And a lot of the times, a lot of superintendents at the conferences will see me sitting with some of the guys from Syngenta or Bayer and having a chat and having a beer. It's all because it's like it's that camaraderie that we've got in the turf industry, which I really enjoy.
Yes.
I can flick the switch off and go, yep, what are you doing? And to be honest, there's quite a few of the reps out there that we have very similar interests on some things. So it's good to catch up with them, and we don't talk about product, we talk about everything else.
Fair. And that's good. And I, you talk about the camaraderie in the industry, and I've mentioned it before. I think our industry is fantastic, and it's great groups of people around the place, and everyone's always too willing to help each other out and offer assistance and guidance and all that sort of stuff where needed, and it shows that it translates as well to the other side, as I was just talking to Nico Douglas from down at Cranbourne, to the dark side sometimes, but that is there as well. So it's across the board, and it all culminates usually in the conference with the ASTMA conference, which this year is going to be held down in Melbourne in about a month's time, I think it is, mate. Is that right?
We actually had a month. Yeah, just a bit less than a month. Actually, it's a bit scary.
Be here before we know it. Mate. Look, that's great. Again, I reiterate it because it surprises me to hear some of these details at length. I didn't know any of this stuff before chatting to you about it, before hearing some of it, even just then, that I didn't understand your background of the company, and when it's always nice when I like to hear in depth and in detail when someone says we're Australian owned and operated. I want to hear the reality base to that. You got like we've just heard all of that stuff and how you're leaders in bringing stuff to the marketplace. So you guys are one of the key businesses supporting the turf industry and helping all of the superintendents and greenkeepers protect the golf courses from different things throughout the year, which is fantastic. I want to try and close out if we can. We just mentioned that
sure.
the conference is, hey, we've spoken enough for one podcast. The Campbell's Corner is coming back, so I will say to everyone, it's coming back. It's going to come back again soon in a few weeks' time. But we touched on the conference just then, the ASTMA conference, the annual event that's this year down in Melbourne. Last year it was at the Gold Coast where we caught up again. Now, we've got something going on a little bit because of a little bit of support from you guys in support of the podcast and being part involved. Can you tell us what you got maybe happening down at the trade show?
Yeah. So one of the things is like that obviously we'll have information about our products and everything like that. But I'm going to have a special giveaway.
Okay.
A mug. I'm not going to say too much about it.
All right.
And we're giving this away. We don't have many to give away, but one of the things that I want to do any of the people listening on the podcast here, anybody of those who are coming down for the conference, come down, mention the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, Keeper of the Green segment, mention Steve's name, any of those three things, and I'll give you a mug right there.
There you go.
Anyone else who's listening to this and can't go to the conference, email myself or Steve if you can put something there in the show notes.
Yep.
And I'll send you a mug. As I said, I only have a limited amount. I've got to see how much I'm going to get in. However, it's like, I'm more than happy because I always look at it going, look, if you can't make it to the conference, I don't want to alienate those people. Go, oh, you're not coming, so I'm not going to give you this. So no, don't work like that. So
mate,
if you can't make it to the conference, especially a lot of guys out regional areas, get in touch with Steve, and Steve will pass on your details, and I'll mail you one.
Absolutely, that's great support. It's a little bit of that's a great little giveaway, mate. I think that's fantastic. Thank you for announcing that on the podcast. That's wonderful news. So anyone who's listening that isn't able to get to the conference, there's a limited number to those available where Nadeem and Colin Campbell Chemicals will be able to send you out a mug. So get in touch with myself or Nadeem, and there's a limited number there that will go away. But for the rest of you that are heading to the conference, there's going to be a few more available down there on a first in, first serve or first in, best dressed scenario. So that's down at the trade show, Colin Campbell Chemicals stand, and Nadeem will be there with bells on, I've got no doubt. And there'll be plenty of information about the product listings of what they have to offer in crop protection and plenty of other information there available. So that's great to hear. Thank you, mate, for announcing that little special deal. So anyone who's listening, get involved with it. We love to see this, and we love the interaction. That's part of it, isn't it, Nadeem? We love this interaction with people.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. I love meeting new people and people I haven't seen before. So so if you are listening to the podcast and I haven't met you before or haven't seen anyone, please come down.
Yes.
have a chat at the stand. If we are sort of fairly open area, but if you know the guys from Ventrac Australia, Chris Steed, Craig Wright, Steve Jackson, who I know quite well, we're right opposite them.
Okay,
so,
very good.
And we're pretty much right there.
There's maps and things. Look, if you're walking around, we all love a good trade show. If you're walking around and you'll come across Colin Campbell Chemicals there. So get in there, say good day to Nadeem. If you haven't met him before, introduce yourself, and you'll get a great conversation and a great contact. That's one of the big things is networking, obviously, with all conferences, and you can call them junkets. I'll throw it out there because sometimes it is a junket, especially at Melbourne. I hope there's some good restaurants still down there in Melbourne. Haven't been there for a few years.
That's it. There is a lot of good restaurants. That's a great thing about Melbourne. So it might be freezing cold, as it always is in the middle of winter, but the food more than makes up for it.
It does indeed. Look, Nadeem, we might leave that there before we get to Campbell's Corner next time. Thank you very much for getting on the podcast with me for Campbell's Corner and giving us that inside knowledge and information about the company itself and its history. I think it's wonderful, and sort of what you guys are leading, bringing into the marketplace as well, mate. I really appreciate that. And insight into yourself and your family there too, because not everyone likes to do that. And I think it's wonderful to hear a bit more about you as well. And we know who you are. And when we catch up next with you, and certainly anyone who hasn't met you can catch up with you at the conference there. So, mate, thank you for that and announcing that giveaway. Fantastic stuff. And I appreciate it and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
No, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for all the listeners and the opportunity to have this podcast and this conversation. Thank you very much. And I'll see hopefully as many of you as I can in Melbourne. And Steve, we will definitely catch up soon face to face.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks for your support, Nadeem.
Cheers, mate.
So what did you think about that one? Look, I really had a great time. As you know, I like chatting to all sorts of different people in the greenkeeping, architecture and golf spaces. Just love having a chat and bringing out inside information and insightful information as well. So I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Really interesting to learn about Colin Campbell Chemicals and Nadeem and his story. Really good to hear about those sorts of things. I really enjoy exposing that stuff to you. Certainly as a sponsor of my podcast, I wanted to be able to bring that out. And I learned a lot of stuff as well, chatting to Nadeem just then in that conversation. There's things that I didn't even know, questions I've never asked him before. So it was really good to hear, and I hope you enjoyed it too. The main thing is that you guys get something out of these chats and conversations and overall in the podcast. So that's what I'm trying to pass on. So thank you very much to Nadeem and Colin Campbell Chemicals for that insight. We're going to bring you more of Campbell's Corner. There's a little bit more of that to come over the coming months, and certainly I appreciate you taking the time out to listen. So please like, share, subscribe, and this one, there's going to be some links in the show notes, as there are on all the podcast episodes that I have. Have a check out of the show notes, because there are some clickable links in there to some bits and pieces. And with the ASTMA conference coming up, and you heard Nadeem, a little giveaway there that he's got going on. Get in touch with me if you can't make it, or Nadeem if you can't make it to the conference. There's a very limited number of mugs there that Colin Campbell Chemicals are giving away. And if you're down at the conference, make sure you go and check them out at the trade show. At the Colin Campbell Chemicals stand, you'll see Nadeem there with bells on. Absolutely great guy. You'll love having a chat with him. And don't forget to mention the Golfing Greenkeeper. And he'll be able to give you, if you get there early enough, he'll have some mugs there to give away to you. So thank you guys for listening. As always, I appreciate it. You hit them clean, we'll keep them green. And I'll catch up with you for another episode very, very soon.